In this tutorial, we will review how to grade with a rubric in Canvas. This demonstration is divided into two sections. Part 1 addresses setting up the rubric for assessment. Part 2 addresses using the rubric for grading. Rubrics are helpful for assessing student work because they allow the professor to be consistent with grading practices. Rubrics allow for transparency with the students about how their grades were calculated, and rubrics are necessary for institutional assessment at the college. Grading with a rubric in Canvas is best done on the web-based platform rather than the Canvas Teacher app. The mobile app may show the rubric differently. Part 1. Setting up the rubric for assessment. You can create a new rubric by selecting the assignment and scrolling down to the bottom of the page. Look for the Add Rubric button. Adding a rubric to a discussion is slightly different than adding a rubric to an assignment because it doesn't have the Add Rubric button that was visible in the Canvas assignment. If you are adding a rubric to a discussion in Canvas, you will need to select the discussion. Select the button with the 3 dots, and then select Add Rubric. If you are using a rubric for institutional assessment, you should locate the rubric. You may have been given instructions for importing the rubric from the Department of Learning Assessment. Assuming you have imported it into your Canvas course section, you can apply the rubric to an assignment by selecting Add Rubric, and select the link titled Find a Rubric. Here you will see multiple scroll bars. If you've already imported the rubric into the course that you are currently working in, make sure that the course is selected in the first column on the left. The second column will have the list of all the rubrics within that course. You will receive an abridged preview of the rubric in the third column. Scroll down to the bottom of this section to select the Use This Rubric button. If you have the rubric saved in another course or sandbox and you want to share it with this course, select the course in the left column that has the rubric you wish to use. You can then locate the rubric in the second column and select the Use This Rubric button on the bottom of the third column. Before using a rubric for assessment, review the rubric content and settings by scrolling down to the rubric and clicking the pencil icon for editing. If the rubric is used for institutional assessment, you should not edit any of the text in the rubric. However, you may edit the points for grading purposes. Check to ensure the institutional outcomes are present in the rubric. These outcomes are denoted by this bullseye symbol. If the institutional outcomes are not present, the rubric will need to be reloaded. Confirm the point values and/or point ranges are correct. Edit the point values by clicking on the pencil icon. Here you can edit the points accordingly. You can also edit the total sum for each criteria on the right-hand side. If you would like to grade your students with a ranged value, select the range checkbox, and you can edit the point values accordingly. At the bottom of the rubric, you'll see a list of checkboxes. Check the Use This Rubric for Assignment Grading checkbox. Ensure this is selected if you plan on having the points that are totaled from the rubric to be used for the student's grade. Click Update Rubric to ensure that changes are saved for the rubric. When using a rubric for institutional assessment, it is important that you refrain from selecting the checkbox for the Remove Points from Rubric option. You don't want to select this because it will affect the data collected. Part 2. Using the rubric for grading. To grade an assignment that a student has submitted, open SpeedGrader from any assignment, graded discussion, or quiz. You can open the SpeedGrader tool in various areas of your course. From Grades, locate the Assignment column by scrolling horizontally and select the drop-down arrow and select SpeedGrader. You can also access SpeedGrader from the assignment itself. Select SpeedGrader. But probably the most common way is to click on the grade link on your to-do list from either your Canvas dashboard or your course homepage. Once you've accessed the SpeedGrader tool, you'll notice that you have a student submission and a student list in this top area. Select the student list drop-down to locate a student submission. To use the rubric for grading, click View Rubric. To view the entire rubric window, you may need to scroll both vertically and horizontally by using the scroll bars. To resize the rubric window, click and drag the sizing column horizontally. For each criterion, click the rating that applies to the student submission. The selected rating displays the rating value in the points field. If a criterion includes a range, clicking a rating selects the entire range and defaults to the highest value in the range. To select a different value within a range, type the value in the points field. You can manually enter points above the criterion maximum point value. Each criterion value adds to the student's total points. When using a rubric that includes institutional outcomes, the same outcome level should be selected as the preceding rubric criterion. Failure to select the same institutional outcome will result in inaccurate data collected related to institutional assessment. Here's a special note about the institutional outcomes. The points listed in the institutional outcomes rows, which are denoted by the bullseye icon, do not contribute to the student grade. Notice how a regular rubric row will update the total points in the bottom right-hand corner. But when the institutional outcome is selected, the total points are unaffected. That is simply because these rows are for tracking assessment and not for grading. Click the Save button. If you set your rubric for grading, the rubric points will be automatically populated in the grade field. Otherwise, you can enter the grade from the rubric manually. You can add a comment for general feedback to the student. Press Submit to complete the grading. Please note, students that do not submit an assignment should not be scored with the rubric.